He grew his first company from a small subscription service to a $100,000 a month contract. But then, a grueling 7-year legal battle forced him to step down as CEO, and he had to start over from scratch. William Lieberman is here to share the hard-won financial lessons he learned from the brink and how founders can stop flying blind. This is Freeing the Founder. Actually, first off, congrats on 10 years.
Oh yeah, thank you. It was really cool. We had a nice all hands Zoom meeting, and it was really cool. It was fun to sort of reflect on all the things that have transpired over 10 years. And it's interesting because, my very first executive admin who is still with me, and she has been with me, working with me now. She's not doing as much now, but still, she's been with me for 10 years. And so I gave a good shout out to Julie. She's fantastic. So that was fun. And then we did there's a service that I know about that does the Zoom games. So we did like a big trivia game with everybody. It was fun.
That's awesome. So why don't we start there, get a bit about your background, about you personally, and what was the catalyst to you starting 10 years ago?
Sure, sure. So in a prior life, so business school, Wall Street, did M&A for a while. Then I started an investment management consulting firm, and I ran operations and finance for that firm. And after a few years, somebody came to me and said, "Hey, we need some technology developed. Will you do it?" And so my business partner at the time said, "Sure." So we developed some software, and it was a FinTech company selling sales compensation solutions to folks like MetLife, AXA, UBS, LPL, some big ones, and then a lot of smaller ones that no one's ever heard of. And it was literally, I have to say, one of the very first subscription model businesses in financial services ever. I mean, other than Bloomberg terminals, we were selling for $195 a month back in 1995. So this is before SaaS was even a phrase. I mean, we're talking way long time ago, and shipping like on 3.5-inch floppy disks. Um, just to date myself. And it was great. And, from there, we built it up. And, within about 4 years, I signed an enterprise deal with MetLife. We started at 195 a month. That deal with MetLife was $100,000 a month, just to show you how we grew that business quickly. It was fantastic. That was a ride. And then I sold, I built it up, about 55 employees. And then I sold my stake and formed this company to provide strategic financial advisory services and HR to small and medium businesses. And, it was interesting because when I was looking for my next thing, it's like, oh, do I want to go get a job and be on the hamster wheel and all that? And I was like, nah, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And so I said, maybe there's a way I can do some consulting on my own. And I was just going to be a solopreneur. And I got I had such a big network that people, as soon as they found out what I was doing, they go, "Oh, can you help me? Can you help me?" And then by the end of my first 6 months, I had enough work that I needed more. And then I said, "Hey, maybe there's a business to be had here." And so then it just snowballed from there.
That's interesting because there's so many entrepreneurs and founders you and I both know who would probably say, "I'm one and done," but you did it again.
Yeah.
What was the feeling like as you exited your first company? Did it take a lot of reflection?
Oh my God. It was scary as shit. It was, what am I doing? I have no income. I have no, benefits. I have no anything. I'm just out there. Now, thank God my wife was working full time. So, we had a backstop. So she had a nice income, and that enabled me to actually make the move. And we had some savings. But it was hard. It was really hard leaving my business because I left the business, but the business remained, right? So it existed for another 10 years, and it was just sold a year and a half ago. So that was really hard. I remember driving to my business partner's house and telling him I'm done. And I just started
Mhm.
crying. I was just like, and he's like, "Dude, it's okay. I know what you need. It's not a problem. We'll be fine. And more importantly, you'll be fine." And he was super supportive.
I'm really intrigued by this. Let's dig into why you were done. What was the emotion? What was the reason behind the emotion?
So a big piece of this, unfortunately, was I went through a really bad divorce. So what happened is it was literally 7 years in the making, like trial, like exhibits and witnesses and shit, right? That is unheard of for divorce. So while I'm going through divorce, I was running the company, but at some point I was spending so much time because I had to for most of the divorce, I was representing myself because I couldn't afford a lawyer. So my business partner took over as CEO. I stepped down as CEO. I said, dude, you got to run this company. I need to focus in on this other crap. I'll be CFO. And so we transitioned the roles. And that enabled me to handle my personal stuff. And but after that, the business was kind of stagnant. It wasn't growing. There wasn't really a need for a CFO, to be honest, full time. And I was, to be honest, kind of bored. Um, and still going through the divorce and etc. So I was like, look, this just doesn't make sense for me to stick around and take a salary so I got to go do something else. I need to fulfill that entrepreneurial juices, if you will, and go after the next because I wasn't feeling it with my old company. And so I said,
Mm.
hey, I have to make a change here. And it was hard. It was really hard. It took me maybe a year of soul searching to finally make the decision and tell him.
Interesting. So as you were turning that corner, was it clear to you what your problem was that you wanted to dedicate yourself to this new problem?
Well, I knew I had the ability to help people with finance, right? And accounting and those types of issues. I had a skill set there. And I enjoyed, I'm kind of a spreadsheet junkie. So I enjoy that work. At the same time, I was a member for many years of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And as part of that, I was a mentor to 12 different really early stage companies. It's an accelerator program that EO has. And so I knew I loved helping small companies grow and scale. And so I go, well, maybe there's a way I can do that because I love doing it. Maybe there's a way I could do that and make a living at it. And so I said, hey, there's an opportunity here for me to be a consultant. And the great thing about being a consultant for me, part of the decision-making criteria was I didn't want to be beholden to one paycheck. I didn't want to be beholden to one income stream. And so I diversified my risk by having multiple clients. And so if any one of them went away, I would still be able to make my mortgage payment. And so that was a big part of the decision. Another big part was the lifestyle of being a consultant. And we had a 2-year-old at the time. So wanting to see him as opposed to getting on the train and going to, Manhattan every day from 7 to 7. So that was important. And, being a finance guy, the tax implications are significant. So, I mean, I have a lot of ability to write off expenses that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. And so you put it all together, and it all made sense at the time for me to be a consultant and then to eventually grow a consulting boutique.
Certainly, you earned your stripes many years ago, and here you are. Fast forward to today, you're serving and you're helping founders and many businesses really navigate business finances. A big part of this, or what's critical, is the trust, is the
Yes,
accuracy, is the reliability. You know this very well.
yes.
What's your core principle around this ideology, and how do you deliver on all of those things?
I think that one of the most important things is setting expectations up front and literally starting in the sales process. So understanding what the client or prospect needs, what they're looking for, what their goals are, and making sure that you communicate all along the way. Here's how we can help you achieve your goals, and then actually doing it, right? So here's what we're going to do the work, report back. Here's what we did, and now here's what we're going to do next week, next month, next quarter. But always try to be in sync with the decision maker as to what their needs are, because their needs are going to change all along the way. Being small businesses, they have to pivot just like I do. So we need to make sure that we remain in sync with their needs and expectations and communicate very clearly how we're going to help them achieve those.
The saying that came to mind as you were sharing that was, "Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them."
Right.
I don't know if
Exactly.
that resonates with you.
It's tell them what you're gonna tell them what you're gonna do it, and then tell them what you did. But yes, exactly that.
Yeah. So you've probably analyzed and worked with thousands of founders, thousands of businesses. What do you feel are were the common themes or the common pitfalls that actually hindered growth?
Well, I can tell you the pain points that we run into a lot. So a lot of pain points. A lot of people come to me and say, as an example, I don't know if I can afford blank, fill in the blank. I don't know if I can afford to hire this person or spend $20,000 a month on Facebook ads or, acquire this other business. So they don't have a clear understanding of their own business finances, their own business cash flow, and their forecast and where they're headed and how they're going to get to where they want to get to. So I like to use the phrase, you need the knobs and dials to fly the plane. And many, many CEOs do not have those knobs and dials. They'll have a bookkeeper, right? And they'll get a report from QuickBooks or whatever their accounting system is that says, hey, last month we did this. And, they think it's correct, but they don't know. That's a whole nother issue. But they don't have insights as to where the business is headed from a financial lens. And this comes across in many aspects because they cannot make effective decisions. A, they can't make effective decisions, and or B, they can't make them quickly enough. And so then they get caught and they're spending money they don't need to spend, or there's supply chain disruptions, tariffs or whatever, and they can't react because they don't have the tool set to make the right decisions quickly enough. And that's one of the main pain points that I get when I talk to prospective clients.
I'm really intrigued by this because outsider looking in, outsider to your domain and your expertise, certainly when a founder gets started, a big part of it is money. Certainly, money is not the only motivator, but you get into business to make money. That's the purpose of a business. However, at the same time, just listening to you, it makes me wonder what is the what's causing this barrier? Is it nature, nurture? Is it tendency? Is it a lack of interest? So if I were to summarize my question to you is after dealing with so many CEOs and founders, what is it in your perspective, in your opinion, that actually is that impediment to digging into the finances and actually understanding it?
So it's a good question. So I think you have different personalities, right? So if you do the whole leadership personality matrix kind of thing, you'll have a lot of people, a lot of CEOs are, the sales promoter, right? So they're passionate about, I'll make one up, about craft beer. They're really good at making craft beer, but they don't necessarily understand the actual bill of materials and cost of goods sold and gross margins and distribution costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They kind of do, and some of the better ones obviously will. But they're really good at beer, and so they need help and understanding what does it take to create a product or service and go to market with it in a very profitable way. And that just takes either education or time, but sometimes literally it's their brain's just not wired for it. And that's okay. They're really good at this other thing, other part of growing and building a business, and they augment what they're not good at. And that could be finance, it could be HR, it could be customer service, right? There's a million things that CEOs might not be good at. And the smart ones augment their team with people that are better than they are in these other areas. And that's really the hallmark of a great CEO is somebody says, hey, look, and for me, I'm not the best salesperson in the world. So I know I need to bring in people that are better at sales than I am to elevate this business, as an example. And so the really good ones will do the same thing on finance and HR and on all the other non-core functions.
So, William, I'm going to ask you next to flex some of your muscles, dig back to your illustrious career, and think back to a time when you and your team were able to provide some expert guidance to a CEO. What was the problem? What was the advice given without giving out sensitivities? And how were you able to turn that business around?
So, I mean, there's a few situations where they were spending more money, right? They were let's say spending more money than was coming in because they say, hey, look, I'm investing in the business, I'm investing in growth, et cetera, et cetera. And I go, okay, well, that's great. But at some point, you see this cash runway, it's going to end. Like you're headed to an abyss. So let's take a step back. Let's create this forecast of where you think you're going to and how you get there. But most importantly, let's create some scenarios. So we have best case, base case, and worst case. And let's give you some what if analysis so that you can see, well, what if we don't close this many deals? What's going to happen? What decisions can we make? And then what we did is we set up a break the glass in case of emergency plan. And in some cases, we had to do that. We had to break the glass, cut expenses as much as possible because sales didn't come in. And this has happened multiple times in a variety of industries, right? It could be technology. It could be, there's one I'm thinking of that's e-commerce. So there's a few cases where we have to put in the guardrails so that a CEO who's like really headed forward, no, I know this will work and trust me, right? Okay, we'll trust you, but within this sort of band. And then once you get beyond this band, we're going to make different decisions. Otherwise, the company will fail. And then when you say it that way and you show it to them in black and white, they're like, okay, I get it. And the smart ones really did. And every once in a while, some didn't. And those companies don't exist today.
That's powerful. I can tell you just listening to you, I myself, not having a financial background like you, I can understand the value of the modeling and the what ifing. But to your point earlier, there's different personalities out there. And I can imagine that there may be some hard headed individuals who don't want to listen. And so my next question is, how do you overcome those differences? Like, what is the key or best practice to making sure that you can actually sit down with a CEO and give them clear, solid advice in a way that will actually be received well?
Well, so you outline it obviously, and you put it together in very simple terms. And so you say, hey, if we stay on this path, here's what's going to happen and why. But in addition to that, what I try to do is leverage their other executive team members, right? So not that it's an intervention, but just to make sure that the CEO understands that it's not just my one perspective, that there's other people that the CEO trusts and has worked with for years that are echoing the same message, right? And
Mm.
in some cases, companies that are a little bit further along, they'll have board members or advisors that I work with that will say, hey, raise their hands as well and say, there's a yellow flag. Oh, now it's an orange flag. Hey, now it's a red flag. And so, they're helpful to the cause, if you will. But you have to be very firm and you have to say, look, you hired me because of my expertise. So if you don't want to listen to me, I get it. I don't agree, but that's your prerogative. But I'm telling you from my experience working with hundreds and hundreds of companies, if you don't do this, and this will happen. Now it's on you, it's your decision. But you hired me for a reason, and here's my advice to you.
I love how you put it back on the other person. That's so effective. How about go let's spend a few more moments on this challenging individual, somebody who is a bit judgmental.
Well,
What are
actually,
their
another
commonness?
word, sorry to interrupt, another word is hubris. And that's a very dangerous person. And those are the ones that I have the most trouble with. People that
Tell me
have
more.
people that are arrogant enough to say, no, this is going to work. Nope, you don't know what you're talking about. Nope, I got it. Right. And every once in a while, I fire those clients. Right. I just say, look, dude, if you're not going to listen to what I have to say, then, well, it's silly to continue to work together. But those are the ones that, and there's not many, right? But there's a couple in the past that have just been so stubborn or so arrogant or have the hubris to say, hey, I'm going to do this and we're going to make millions and millions of dollars no matter what. And then I'm like, I don't see it. And I don't see it. And then month goes by, another month goes by, another month, and then a year goes by, and then like, you are running out of business, gonna run this business into the ground. And they do. And those are the ones that I struggle with.
Do you think they carry some sort of a misunderstanding or misperception about the accounting advisory and analysis field?
No, no, not at all. I think it's, it could be rose-colored glasses kind of situation. It could be, they have a chip on their shoulder from a failure in their past. I think that's, oftentimes they're like there to prove something either to themselves, could be to their parents, right? If it's a family business. There's other issues that are involved because these aren't stupid people.
Right.
But they're just challenged to the point where they're like, I know what I'm doing and everybody else be damned. So it's not necessary, and they're not like ignoring finance and accounting and what the reports are saying. They're kind of ignoring what everybody's telling them.
Yeah. William, as you know, the problem that I solve as a COO or fractional executive is the founder bottleneck, and I'm sure you've seen your fair share of this dilemma with the companies and businesses you've worked with. Um, so I just want to dig into that. How have you seen this founder bottleneck translate to some of the clients and companies that you've worked with? Does it actually slow that growth?
100%. And look, I've experienced it myself, right? So I've lived the founder bottleneck. But yes, I've seen it happen many times, where the CEO either doesn't trust other people to do the job as well as they could do it, which means that they have the wrong team, right? They don't have the right people on the team. Like back to my other comment, you need to have people that are better at XYZ function than you are as CEO. You're the leader. You're supposed to provide the vision and the resources, like capital. So, and then say, hey, we're gonna head over the hill, and there's the bad guys, and here are all your guns and bullets. Go get them, right? Um, but if they're like, no, I'm gonna storm the hill myself, and you guys kind of just come along for the ride, that's dangerous because they could get shot and fall in the field, and then there's no leader. So the ones that are really good have that understanding that they need to delegate to the right people and cannot hold all this on themselves. And again, I've done this myself. It's hard to give up control. It's hard to say, hey, I need XYZ person to do this presentation, but I know I could do it better, right? Ugh. Well, then I don't have the right person. I need to find the right person who can do a presentation better than I can. And so it takes a while to find those people and to trust them and to delegate them and to give them the runway to prove themselves as truly valuable members of the team. And it takes a little bit of soul searching and digging and letting go. And that's hard to do, especially for entrepreneurs that are control freaks, which many are.
Hey, I resemble that comment. Um, have you been in positions though where you've, because of your analysis, certainly you start with the financial side, but have you been in positions where you've been able to give coaching and advice or guidance that actually leads to some sort of operational change for that founder, for that CEO? So, in other words, do you find yourself cross not crossing the lines is the wrong way of saying it, but do you breach that boundary of finances?
Well, what happens is, the way I like to say is, we act as a financial business partner, but in many cases, our team members have great operational experience also. So they've been in the seat of helping companies grow and scale from a strategic perspective. And so, yes, we have many clients where we're like the adult in the room, right? And so they lean on us for that advice. Like, should I hire this person? What do you think? And then we'll interview that person. Should this person be my head of sales? And because our team and has experience working with so many different types of C-level executives, we can bring to the table a different perspective than the CEO will have on whether or not this is a good team member, or should I give equity out to my team, right? And does that make sense strategically? How do I build this business for maximum profitability is not just a finance question. It's a strategic question about what am I really good at and what will at the end of the day create the most value for the shareholders or the owners of the business. And that's again very strategic input that the CEOs will definitely rely on us many times as they're making the difficult decisions. I get, calls from clients today still where it's like, hey, should I divest myself of this business or not? Right. And that's like a deep question. There's a lot involved in that question. And so we get into it. Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned your team. I remember a couple of years ago first going onto your website and I looked at your roster and I says, wow, that is an impressive group of people. I mean, you have a large list of experts. You've been at this for 10 years, but certainly not your first rodeo. What do you think has been a core principle that's guided you, and what has made you attractive to the people who work with you?
I like this. It's interesting. We actually did a survey of the team, and we got some really good feedback as to what they like, right? And they love working with me and my wife Sarah, who runs the HR side of the house, HR consulting division, and they really enjoy the interaction. We're very, easy to work with, and we like to have fun, but we're also very focused in on meeting the client's needs. And we can't do that without these team members. And having the right people with the right set of expertise is one piece, but you also have to have it in the business we're in. You also have to be a good consultant. So you need to be a subject matter expert in finance or HR or M&A or whatever it might be. But you also have to be able to have that communication, that one-on-one, that gravitas, so that you can sit across the table from a CEO who's been doing, his or her thing for 20 years and they know everything there is to know about widgets. You need to be able to sit down and get up to speed very quickly on that business and then have a conversation with them that might not be the easiest. Like, hey, you're not doing this right. Your baby's ugly, but we can fix it. And here's what we need to do to fix it. So the team that we've built has that ability to have those types of conversations. They love working with us. They love working with the types of clients that we have, and they like to have fun along the way. And so you put all that together and build a team that really enjoys working together and working towards the vision of building a really preeminent boutique for what we're doing.
Final question for you, William, is going to be personal to you. This not being your first rodeo, and as you look back at your 10 years of since you started this firm, is there one thing or two things that continue to be a guiding light for you? Perhaps something that you learned in your first business that is every now and then guiding you, and that little voice in your shoulder saying, "Do not make this mistake again."
Yeah. So a big mistake I made in my software company that I built was when we were out looking for strategic investors. We had an advisor, an M&A advisor, and he said, "There's this one firm. They're the ones we're going to run down the path with them." And we did that. And he said, "We don't need to talk to these other ones. Let's just play this one out. I know them. They're good guys." Blah, 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 blah. And so what happened is we ran one horse, and it took a lot longer than we all thought. The company was running out of money. I was within 2 weeks of having to lay off half the company. And then we finally
Wow.
closed the deal and we got the company funded. But the mistake was running one horse. And so now I always think about making sure that I have options. And, if this doesn't work, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this, right? Even having two options is better than only having one. And so that's really important to me. And that's, when like sometimes sales drops, I have the ability to scale back the business because I'm thinking ahead. Well, if this were to happen, what would I do? So I have options as opposed to, oh, I just got to lay off a bunch of people. And because that's the worst case. And so that's really important to me, is making sure that, I have the ability to navigate the hurdles along the way, because I have set aside or planned for various scenarios.
That's the type of wisdom that only you gain through experience. So I appreciate you sharing that, William. I can tell you that, we're crossing the 30-minute mark. I've learned from you, as I always do, and I guarantee that the viewers and listeners of this content are going to learn from you. Thank you so much, and congrats again to 10 years.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.